how did you get involved in music? Where did you get the interest from?
Well, it goes back to just my family, I would say. My household was very musical. My mom and dad always had music in the house, and I had older brothers and sisters who, played music and sang music, and there was always a Rankin band and some kind of Rankin performance. And, of course, the community I come from, it's a very musical community, a lot of Cape Breton fiddle music, and a lot of music in general. So my roots are where I come from, I guess.
All right, I just want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. Is it Mabu, Nova Scotia you're from?
I say Mabu. Some people say Mabu, but Mabu for me.
What's the population of that area?
With Marble is a small village and surrounding areas. I don't know, a couple of thousand maybe. I'm not quite sure, to be quite honest. It varies, I guess, depending on how the industry is going out west, because a lot of people, just from everywhere in the East Coast, tend to leave and go work out in the west. So there are a lot of people from my neck of the woods that are back and forth to Alberta in particular, and all over the world, really. People are scattered all over the place, and a lot of people end up staying where they go to work. But I think people generally like to return. The hardcore people return to try and live there. Probably like a lot of places in Newfoundland, it's a hard place to make a living and to live. In a lot of ways, it's become a retirement place for people. But I don't know, a couple of thousand maybe. Like I said, it varies. I haven't checked the census recently.
And of course, we're talking about the Rankin family, which consisted of you, Cookie, Heather, Raylene, and your late brother John. I want to know, how did that all come about? Because you mentioned that time that music has been around your whole family, but when did you really kind of take it seriously and kind of think, okay, we can do this as a career?
Well, when I was a kid, my older siblings had a band, and it consisted of John Moores and Raylene and my brother David and my older sister Geraldine and my oldest sister Genevieve. And they played for local functions, a lot of weddings and dances, just in the local area around Marble, Inverness County. And they pretty much played for anything that was happening, weddings and funerals and whatever they were needed for. And plus, my mom was terrific at organizing the rest of us to go around to, local concerts, variety concerts, they used to call them in those days. When I was a young kid, with my sisters, my younger sisters, Cookie and Susan, and Heather and Nancy, we sang, sort of opened up for the band, and then later I was kind of the opening act. I sang John Denver songs and Stompin' Tom songs for the band when they did concerts and things. Probably in my 12 or 13, I started playing drums for the group. And then in my teens, I got interested in playing guitar and singing, and I worked on that. And probably through college, I started writing songs. When the Rankin family, I think it was around 1988, everybody was sort of, all of my siblings were doing their own solo things, whether it was music or going to college. And about 1988, we all got together for a production called the Marble Jig. We put together a show of Rankin family music, which was fiddle music, original songs, and some Celtic ballads, and then there was some comic from Sydney, and they did skits and things. That same year, we released the first Rankin family record, about 1989, I believe, and then within that year, we released. About 1990, independently we released another record called Fare Thee Well, Love, and it wasn't. We started touring, doing festivals, and it wasn't until about 1992 or 93, I can't quite recall. We signed with EMI. They released those records and got songs on the radio, and it was flat out for 10 years, making records and touring all over the place. And then 1999. 1999, we disbanded, and 2001, I released a solo CD called Song Dog, and I've been working as a solo artist ever since. And in there, we did a couple of Rankin records, some reunion records, and reunion tours where we toured across Canada mainly. But primarily, I've been a solo artist since then.
How old were you when you first signed that record deal?
Probably for today's standards, I was old. Maybe I was mid-24, 25. And I remember, I think I was around 26 or 27 when Fare Thee Well Love was released as a single with EMI, and it went to number one and stayed there for 3 weeks on pop radio. A very unlikely song because it was a very long song and it was a slow ballad. The chorus was like a minute into the song, and it was a duet, and it was very unlike anything that was on the radio at the time. It was all sort of pop music, pretty much straight-ahead pop music at the time from the 80s, 90s, I guess. And but I think at the time there was a resurgence in Canadian music. I think the Rankins came along at the right time, and we had something that was very unique. And there was this interest with labels and in the country just for Canadian music, and there was bands like Sarah McLachlan and the Bare Naked Ladies and Blue Rodeo, and just started getting a lot of recognition, in particular in Canada at the time. So we were part of that wave, I believe.
The other thing I kind of want to mention, because I totally agree with you on that point, my mom and dad kind of introduced me to the whole Rankin family. Now, of course, I was born in 91, so you guys were already hitting your stride and had a few songs out. Right now on my iPod, as I'm looking at it, I have Moving On, Maybe You're Right. Those are the two big ones that come to mind. What are your favorite Rankin family songs?
Oh, well, I don't really... be quite honest, I don't really go back and listen to that music. Maybe the most definitive songs for me were that really struck a chord with people on a commercial level or nationally across the country was maybe Fare Thee Well Love. Is probably my most successful song because it's sort of gone on to take a life of its own. It's being recorded by lots of artists and choirs and symphonies. And then there's songs like... You Feel the Same Way Too, which people, I still sing that song in my set every show, and people of all ages have grown up with that song and, play it at parties and weddings and all kinds of events. And Mull River Shuffle is another song that's kind of an original song based on sort of a folk song that I grew up with that became sort of a definitive Rankin family song because it incorporated original, traditional fiddle music, all kinds of elements, pretty much everything that we did in the group, because the band was one of the special things about the group was that it had all these different elements, we had vocals and harmonies, original songs, traditional music, step dancing, Celtic fiddle music. So that song kind of encompassed all of those things.
Now, Jimmy, you did great with the Rankins, but that song, Midnight Angel, I remember going through Nova Scotia when I was younger. We were helping my brother move out west, traveling across Canada in a car, and we just got off the ferry, and two songs I remember coming on the radio were Tim McGraw's Unbroken and your Midnight Angel. Can you explain how you came to the decision to go solo?
Yeah. Well, those songs. Midnight Angel was from my first solo record called Song Dog, and I've been thinking about that record for a long time. And even when I was working with the Rankins, and some of those songs had been kicking around, and I didn't think they quite applied to the Rankins, so they were sort of in my song box. And so when I finally made that record, it was kind of inspired by different styles and things that influence music that influenced me growing up. And I guess at the time it could be, maybe now it could be classified as an Americana record. It's very rootsy and folksy. And in the middle of the record, there's a little section where it's sort of what I call a maritime moment. There's bouzouki with sort of maritime-inspired songs and ballads. That record is sort of where I was at the time, and all the different styles, things that had influenced me and inspired me in my music. You just mentioned about some of the music that inspired you. Who were some of your musical acts that kind of maybe contributed to that kind of style of music? Well, I was very fortunate when I was growing up. I probably the first music that I was exposed to was Cape Breton fiddle music. My mom and dad just loved it, and the community was just full of that kind of music, and there were always fiddlers and piano players in and out of our house, playing that music. And my brother John Morris at the time, when he was quite young, he played that music and was a master fiddler, Cape Breton fiddler and piano player. And so I heard that music from the start. So that's sort of where I took my inspiration from. As I got older, I started playing more guitar, and then started doing open mics and playing trios with my brother and for dances.
And you just mentioned your brother, of course, John Morris, who tragically passed away in a truck crash. If you don't mind me asking, where were you two when you got the news of this?
I was I was in Toronto, and I was about to go and do a sound check for this benefit at the time they were having called Farm Aid. And I got the news before sound check, and of course I went directly home. So, yeah, that wasn't a good day. That's that's where I was at the time.
I just want to ask this as well, just the last question on this one, is when you got the news, did you kind of take a bit of time off and then think to yourself that, okay, did that kind of contribute to you going off on your own at any point?
Well, it certainly cemented the deal that, the Rankins, the Rankin family that people knew it as, was no longer. There would never be that kind of reunion of us ever getting together again and touring with the Rankins. Because I think John Morris was the Celtic heartbeat. He was the real, musical brain behind it. He was the guy who was, he had perfect pitch, and he played several instruments and anything he really wanted to. And he really was the Celtic mind behind it, because he just knew that music so well, those melodies. And he had a incredible way of combining those styles of contemporary music, which he loved, piano and traditional. And so I needed to go back to work, so took some time off and thought about a record, and contacted Tim Thorney from Toronto, originally from Winnipeg, living in Toronto, and we started work on this album called Song Dog. I didn't really look back. I just sort of started going, and fortunately that record relaunched me into the music industry as a solo artist, and I really worked really hard, and going back out with a band, and learning how to carry a 90-minute, 2-hour show by myself. So it took some learning. I'm still learning. It's been great. These days I'm doing a lot of acoustic work. I go out with a couple of musicians and guitar and upright bass. And the great thing is that all these years later, I have this really deep catalog of songs that spans back to early Rankin days. So I like to draw on all of those songs, and I've been revisiting the older ones much more these days as I go back and listen to those songs and deliver them acoustically. And it's fun, and people remember them, which is really cool.
And one of the big things that I want to talk about, too, off that your debut album, I kind of got the exposure of course, the Midnight Angel coming through Nova Scotia, but you were also featured on CMT's Countdown, and I remember Followed Her Around was a big hit. To be honest, I still listen to it to this day, because I feel like it's one of those songs that when you're around your teenage years, sometimes you tend to follow somebody around, whether it be a girl or a guy, just to try to get their approval or just try to get noticed. But the one thing that I want to mention, too, about this is I read that you filmed this in a strip joint.
An exotic dancing locale.
There you go. If you want to, proper term.
Yeah, I did. I shot it at Ralph's in Dartmouth, and it actually probably was one of the easiest and most fun videos I've ever shot. The people at that club were really very accommodating, and if you look at that video, it's mostly one shot of me walking through this bar, and I had a lot of my friends were in the video. Some of them are no longer with us, but it was cool. I had really some good friends in there sitting down.
Now, were they already in there, Jimmy, or did you ask them to come in?
No, I invited them, and a lot of them were just in there anyway. I have fond memories of that. I just remember how accommodating those the people at Ralph's were, the staff and everything, and it was just a fun video to shoot. You know, you talk about hearing those songs when you're a kid. One of the interesting things about my shows now is I have people coming out to my shows at like your age, and then people my age and even older that grew up with Rankin music, and then people that grew up with my music and their parents played it for them. Now they're coming out to my shows, so it's sort of a cross-generational audience I have, which is really quite interesting. It's just not one demographic, it's sort of a mix, which I find really interesting.
How does that feel, knowing that you'd have someone's father coming up to you and saying, hey, I remember you from the Rankin Family, and then you have maybe their son saying, hey, I remember Midnight Angel, like, and then two of them kind of have a little discussion themselves going like, yeah, we both listened to it, like, because there's such a big age gap, like you mentioned. But how does that feel as an artist, knowing that you're touching so many people?
It's a very good feeling. It's a career that spans over 25 years, and to have people come to me and tell me, you know, like yourself, I heard this when I was 6 years old, or I had somebody at my show the other night. I was way up north in Yellowknife. Somebody came to me, and she was with her daughter, and she said the first concert my daughter went to was one of your shows, and I was pregnant with her. So you can't go back much farther than that. So, but I like it, the fact that those songs still speak to people and they mean something to people. And you know, those songs I wrote for the Rankins way back in the day, you know, people still want to hear them, and they still call out for them, and they play them at parties and weddings and funerals and good times and bad times. And, you know, it resonates with people, and it means a lot to me that people, you know, remember. It doesn't happen for everybody, you know. It's not just a flash in the pan thing. It's timeless, I guess.
I want to mention just about the Followed Her Around again. Where did you come up with the idea to film it in the bar? And because, I mean, it's a very interesting video. It's one that at the time when I was watching it, I was like, look at this guy go. He's just going in a bar or like going in a strip joint and just singing, and people are just dancing in the background like there's no big deal. So, I mean, did it take a lot of effort to get everyone to kind of, like the choreography of it all?
Yeah, the director, George Doherty, I'd worked with him on Rankin Family videos in the past, so he filmed 40 Days, and he also filmed You Feel the Same Way Too. And I can't remember, I think it was our concept to do something that was a bit grittier than anything I'd done in the past. And I talked to George about it, and he said, yeah, sure. So he arrived in Halifax, and he was living in L.A. at the time, I believe, and he arrived in Halifax, and we went directly to Ralph's to audition dancers. That was fun. Then I think the next day he started early in the morning, or maybe the night before, and set up the whole shot sequence, and we had some production company in Halifax, you know, audition people for the parts and get people to be the bartender. And I recommended using a lot of friends and people I knew, and so it was choreographed. So basically, it was all set up, and like I said, it was an easy video for me. I just walked in, put on a leather jacket, and did some makeup, and walked through the shots with George. We were finished quite early in the day, which was great because they had to reopen for business that evening. So we shot in the morning and early afternoon, and it was just fun to do. It was working with somebody who understands where you're coming from and who's got their act together, and you don't have to worry about technical stuff. You just go in and lip sync and try to look good. And so that's the way it was with George. He was a real pro. He'd shot hundreds of videos. I'd worked with him before, so it was pretty much choreographed and scripted out, and of course things change, but working with somebody, you know, you bounce ideas off each other, and he gives you direction, and you have suggestions. So to me, it was just it was easy and fun. It was basically one shot, you know. I can't remember how many times we filmed it. And then it was done.
Was the song dedicated to anyone? Because I know at the beginning of it, you're kind of going through your own struggle of following someone around. But at the end of it, and I kind of like this part as I got older as well, is that at the end of it, you're kind of saying about how your son is giving you the same message. Like you were saying, I followed her around. Now your son's basically telling you, hey, Dad, I'm going into town. And then you're saying, I think he follows her around. So was it kind of like a big loop?
Yeah, it's cyclical. It's like he's making the same mistakes, So that's basically the gist of the song at the end, and you're trying to tell him not to. And I mean, it doesn't have to be about a girl. It's, I think people, it can be. One thing I like about songs is people take out of them what they want. It means songs mean different things for different people, and really, maybe a deeper message of that song. It could be about making the same mistakes in life.
Thanks so much for doing this, Jimmy. Like I said, I'm a big fan, and to interview you, this was so cool.
Hey, man, anytime. Nice talking to you. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been a big fan, so you can imagine, like, when I've interviewed some big guys in Canada, but when your wife basically got back to me and said Jimmy's down, I said, oh, no. I said, I gotta get ready and get prepared.
Oh, dude, anytime. I'm always up for doing somebody who does research and who's interested is cool with me.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Jimmy Rankin for coming on the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, don't follow girls around. Don't be naive. Just wait for your midnight angel to come, right, Jimmy? Anyways, thanks for listening, and good night.